I don't know.
So there aren't necessarily practical applications of these. Okay.
You can say like it was spoken, right?
Yes.
So that would be
There's-
third person,
When you're
where they
talking,
were
Who
spoken.
men are-
exactly, you could talk about words being spoken,
Okay.
okay? But can it, like, a person can't be like spoken, like we never say that.
Mm-hmm.
But just like I, as a person, can say I was spoken,
Yeah.
and that's a nonsensical sentence in English.
Mm-hmm.
I can also say "Ani ne'amarti" in Hebrew, and it's a nonsensical sentence.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, but it exists grammatically.
Got it.
So yeah, not every single form is always going to work, especially in the passive.
Yeah.
Right. So now we take a look at the next one. The next one is the he feel. I don't know if we want to go. I don't know if I want to go into it right now, but I just want to point out one thing. It's telling you here. It means to rise or increase in prices. So we had two verbs that are similar in meaning about words being spoken, and we have all of a sudden one that's talking about rise in prices. Well, sometimes
Like an auction.
sometimes verbs, roots have more than one meaning, and sometimes you have a certain meaning actualized in a certain binyan, and other meaning will be actualized in a different binyan.
Got it.
That happens.
Have to make it difficult.
Huh?
You have to make it difficult.
I mean,
Yeah.
English really does it all, so
Yeah.
thankfully.
It's a lot easier.
Yeah.
So.
But let's go back to page 3, and we can look at, because that's a more standard version, right? I don't want to do anything crazy, like the first one I want to do a really standard one for he feel. Okay, he feels this is going to be to remind. Right, to remind.
Thank you.
So, so how does it work? So the who, you always go to the who form, right? In this case, he feel, right? So our root is this, Zayin, Kaf, Resh, right? He feel, he's kir. Okay? So, and this is E, he's kir, right?
How come it's Maz here in the present tense?
That's the present tense. That's, the present tense
that
is
how
gonna
it
have a
works?
different form.
Okay.
It's only Nifal that happens to have the same
Oh,
form
okay.
in the present and past.
Got it.
It's just,
Okay.
and even that is not exactly the same form, because if you notice, the second vowel is different. It's a patach versus a kamatz. Not that it's pronounced the same, but it's technically different.
Was there a lesson on vowels?
On vowels,
Yeah, I'm just curious if.
no.
He doesn't like me.
I'd love to learn at some point.
I don't know.
Because I know what they
to write.
sound like, but I don't know what the differences
I know,
are.
I don't like to bother with them.
Okay, got it.
Even, like, this is the only time when I would want you to look at them, because this is like, we're like deep in the grammar, you know, but otherwise, you know, it's better to not even bother with it.
Okay.
Do you understand what he feel is? Sorry if I interrupted.
Yeah, no, you're right on topic here.
So like
He
what?
means to cause something.
So I reminded you.
Yeah.
You
Think
cause
of it
someone
like
to
this.
remember.
Exactly. The root means to remember. So the word remind, we think of it in English like, oh, that's another action, right? It's a different action. In Hebrew, you make that action by causing someone to remember, right? The meaning here is remember.
So, okay. So this is to remember is lizochar,
Lizkor, which is,
lizkor.
that's the infinitive. The infinitive.
To remind.
Each binyan will have its own infinitive form. Except for the two of them that don't have it, it doesn't exist for them, right? The pu'al and the hufal don't have any infinitive. But 5 out of the 7 will have their own infinitive forms.
So what's the infinitive of to remind?
To remind, le'askir.
Lehezkir.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
lehaskir. It's
Lehiskir or lehaskir?
lehaskir. It's the one here in the middle of the page on the left. Infinitive. Lehaskir.
And then so what is it up here? To be reminded. So that's passive.
That's
So
the
that's the pa.
that's the
Pa'el.
nifal.
That's the nifal.
Yeah, nifal.
Got it.
The infinitive is lehizacher. That's just how the infinitive looks for nifal. Okay. Right. So right. So we're looking at past tense here. So hiskir is going to be here. Who hiskir. Right. The he form is going to be the same when we add the hey to it. Hiskira. So those are always going to be like a little bit different, right, than the other one. But
Wait, sorry, I'm so confused. Why is it an e and not a? I thought we were
Yeah.
to remind lehiskir.
lehaskir, lehaskir, lehaskir.
And then why is it hiskir here?
This is past tense. This past tense. What's it called? Past tense. Third person. It's a conjugated already.
This
That
is just
means-
the infinitive, like to
Oh,
remind
because we
someone.
inherit this, right?
So they're just looking at the regular binyan, like without the two in front of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the infinitive means to remind, laskir, to remind. But hiskir means he reminded,
Gotcha.
right? And hiskira is she reminded. But then when we're adding all the endings, what happens to it is it becomes hiskarti. Okay, hiskarti. So that form that you're using is hiskar, and then the end hiskarti, hiskarta, hiskart. Hiskir, hiskira, hiskarnu, hiskartam, and then
Lehiskarti.
hiskiru. It's again for the third person. It's going to be the yud in this position here, right? Hiskiru. So these ones have a yud here, and the other ones have an ah sound there after the ka. Okay,
Correct. Okay.
does that make sense?
I'm slow. Hold on.
I mean, you have those to keep, so you can.
I'm trying to work my way through it. Hiskarti.
Do you have any questions?
I probably have a lot of questions, but
Yeah.
just trying to follow along here.
Okay, let's take a look at another one. We'll take a look on page 5. I don't think I'm gonna write this one out. But I'm gonna write out just like, I'll just write out the root here, okay? The root is this. Right, shin, aleph, lam. Okay, means to ask or to borrow. Okay, and it comes in there are 4 verbs that come from this root, 4 different binyanim. Okay, so what are they? First one, pa'al, right? So the pa'al is just going to be sha'al, right? So that is a simple one. We know how to do that. Sha'alti, right? You guys want to say what? Sha'alti, sha'alta.
Shalta.
Yeah, ata sha'alta. Ad sha'al. Who
Sha'al.
sha'al. He
Sha'al.
la.
La.
Sha'la.
Sha'ala.
Anachnu sha'alnu. Atem
Ten. Shalten.
sha'altem. Ham
Shal.
sha'alu.
Shal.
Perfect, right, so pa'al, we got that. Next one,
Sure.
we've got, yeah, sure. Next one, we've got Nephi. We've got one that's Nephi. How do we do the Nephi? Okay, now that one. So the first one, the meaning was of pa'al was to ask, request, or borrow. Nephi is now going to be the passive of that. So something was asked or borrowed.
Nisal.
Huh?
Nisal.
Nishad.
Nishal.
Yeah. So that would be nishad. Right? So that's simple. Now you've got nishad. That's your form right here. That's easy, right? Ani nishalti. Ata nishalta. At nishal. Hu nishal.
Nishal.
He
Nishallah.
nishala. I think. Let me make sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, nishallah. Sometimes when you repeat it so many times, it's like, you're like,
Becomes
is that right?
yeah.
Okay, anachnu,
Nishal.
nishalnu, atem,
Nishal.
nishaltem, hem,
Nishalu.
yeah, hem, nishalu. Okay, perfect. Right, so we got those two down. Next one, he, she, he feel, right, is gonna be he, she, right, he, she, right, he feel, he, she.
Nishil.
Then remember, this is always the third person singular form, the who form, right? So that goes here. Now what happens to it, we said this yud becomes like a ah sound. It's not an e.
Nishalti.
Ishalti, yeah. You got it.
I got it.
Ata, ishalt.
Nishalta.
Yeah, at,
Ishal.
ishalt. Who,
Hishal.
Hishil.
Hishil.
Yeah.
Hishil.
ishil. He,
Hishala.
ishila.
Hishila.
Yeah.
Well, oh, because if
this
it's-
won't be true also for down here. Everything third person will follow this.
Got it.
Anachnu,
Hishal. Nu.
yeah, ishalnu.
Hishalnu.
Atem,
Hishal.
ishaltem. Hem,
Hishil.
ishilu.
Hishil.
Ishilu.
Hishilu.
Yeah, ishilu. Ishilu. With the-
Hishilu.
This is, stays, the stress stays on this one. It got cut off, Hishilu got cut off at the bottom of this page.
What would Hishilu mean?
Hishilu means they were lent. They were lent. Like, no, sorry. Hishilu, they lent.
Active causative.
They lent something to someone. They lent the books.
The money. Yeah.
The money.
The thing that was being lent. Right.
Yeah, but they, a group of people did.
Yeah.
Like Hishil, who Hishil li sefer, he lent me a book. Hem Hishilu li sefer, or hem Hishilu li kesef. A group of people lent me money or lent me books. Or
Yeah.
Right. So now we can go into the next one, Hufa, right? Hufa. Hufa is gonna be, so this one, so the same thing, right? We got the same endings for the past tense. And instead of it being, right, so Hishil was Hishil, Hufa is gonna be what?
Ushal.
Yeah, Hushal, just like that. Hushal. And that one is not changing in any of the forms. So all you do is just take Hushal and you apply these endings. And it's just like Ani Hushalti, Ata Hushalta, Ad Hushal, Hu Hushal, He Hushala, Hushla,
Ushla.
Hushala, no, Hushala, sorry. Hushala, Hushalnu, Hushaltem, Hushalu. That's how it goes. So like these forms are like not common, like nobody says Hushal, like nobody says that. I'm just saying like some of these forms are like extremely rare. Like, so for this one, that's all we can do because we don't have any other options here. You know, I don't think there are any other verbs that exist from this group in other binyanim. So which ones do we have left? I guess we need to take a look at
And again, this would be like a nonsense sentence if you were to actually use that, right?
which one.
Hushal, he can be lent.
If he was a slave, maybe.
Maybe.
Was lent.
He was lent.
No.
No, because then that would be,
It can be referring to the book. The book was lent.
Okay.
A sefer hushal is like a totally
sefer
normal sentence, like that you
Got
would
it.
say. Definitely,
Okay.
you could say that. What you would not say is like, ani hushalti, that you would never say, because like, I was lent. I mean, maybe, I don't know, you know, in some context.
But yeah, if he's a slave or something, yeah.
Or employee.
Yeah,
Just like-
it's thinking of manager.
Is that what you said originally?
That's the
I
slave.
read it originally.
So I think our best bet for like Heath Pael is maybe to go back to the first page, the one with the falling in love. So for that one, we're gonna do a different route, right? So I'm gonna be clear, we're going back to aha. And this is Heath Pael. Okay, this one might look like it was so long and complicated. It's not that complicated, because all you're doing is taking the word heat, not the word, but like the syllable heat, and adding it to the front, to what otherwise would be the pa. So if you look at the two forms, one on top of the other, you see it's like exact mirror image, like just the one has heat in front of it. So you had ahavti, hitahavti. You had ahavta, hitahavta, right? So it's literally, it's that simple.
Explain to me what he pile means, or he
So-
tahav means?
Fell in love, hitahav.
Because it's reflexive?
That's,
Reciprocal. Okay.
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, that is the only difference, I just noticed, is that the third person has this as a right? Not a, right? So it would be heat ahev,
Not he.
Not-
Heat aha.
not heat ahav. Yeah, it would be heat ahev. Now, this is like when you say Kaddish, and they say all of those like
Yitka. Yitka.
Yitbarach, Yishtabach, all of that. That's all this form.
Because it's reflective on the other person that we're saying it about? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, like, why is it?
It's
Heath
reflexive,
Pael?
we're praising Hashem, it's reflexive on Hashem.
On Hashem.
Yeah.
Okay.
But reflexive,
It's not only reflexive, it's reflexive, or it can also be something reciprocal.
so in this case it's reciprocal, but in like Kaddish, it's reflexive. Reflexive meaning that we're talking about something else.
Reflexive means
Or
that
that
it
word.
goes back to itself. It goes back to itself.
Then how are we saying it reflexive on Hashem?
Because we're blessing ourselves. when we
It's,
bless Hashem.
here's the thing,
Oh.
some of these roots,
That's
some of the verbs are not,
We're just copying the words.
are not like, it's not only like, what it may be like grammatically like reflexive. It may be reflexive when you look deeper into it, right? Because of the meaning of the root, kind of like the way we saw, zachar, the root has to do with memory. So to remind is now causative, right? It's causing, you're causing someone to remember, right? So when you think of it that way, you're like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense why that's causative, right? Same thing with hitpa'el, why it's reflexive. If you look deeper into it, you see how that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But that's, yeah, what are you saying?
I have a good example of this
What's your
actually.
example? You have
And
another
you know,
one?
this is Jewish day school. Heat palel means to pray.
Right.
And when you pray, you're actually supposed to be introspecting.
Mhm.
So in that way, it's reflexive. That's probably the best
Gotcha.
Yeah,
example of that.
yeah. I mean, they're always gonna be something you do by yourself or something that you do back to yourself, like, right, that's what that means, reflexive, so. Alright, so we covered pretty much all of them, the only thing we didn't cover maybe is PL, yeah, so we need to look at PL, we kind of skipped over that one. Let's see if I have any example here,
There's one on here.
yeah. Here, we can look at page 8, that has an example of PL and PUL. This is the root. But what happens is, and we went over this a little bit, over this in the last class. That when you have a 3-letter root, sometimes you have the middle letter is a vav or a yud. This is a weak situation, weak letter in the middle, okay? Yud or a vav. It will disappear in the pa'al, okay? It will disappear. So, for example of that, of this letter disappearing in pa'al, look on the other side of the page where you have bet, vav, zayin, okay? To despise or scorn, vaz, right? Look at that, disappears completely, there is no vav, right?
Wow. The root is that Vav Zion, but it becomes Baz.
Yes,
Wow.
it disappears. That happens every time, okay? There's a whole bunch technically every root is 3 letters, but people sometimes say there are 2-letter roots. They're not really 2-letter roots. What happens is the middle letter just disappears.
So the Vav turns into 2 Yuds in Beit Vav Shin.
It doesn't turn into 2 yuds. I mean, it does, yes, in this case.
But only because of the binyan, right?
It's the root, they put the root here as the vav, and it probably is. It's like, it can be a vav or a yud. In this case, it's a yud. In this verb, it's a yud.
Yeah, I don't see a Vav anywhere.
Yeah, the vav is only in the root that they're showing me
Got it.
here, but I think that's a theoretical thing.
Well, like busha means
Like busha is yeah.
shame.
Busha
Right.
means
Is
shame,
it?
exactly. So that's what that means. So here this is PL, right? And this is levayesh, to shame or to embarrass, right? So I'm gonna erase this because it's not enough space. I'm just gonna erase this. So I want to explain to you how to get to PL from Pa'al, right? Pa'al is our simplest form. How do we conceptualize it in our mind so we can either quickly know the right forms for PL? So just like if this were Pa'al, right? And that's a bad example because of that middle letter would disappear in this case, right? So it does not make that. But I want to do another one. I want to do a totally different one. It's not on the sheet. We'll do shavar and shiber, okay? So here, shavar, which means to break, right? If it's pa'al, would be shavar. And then in the PL would be shiber, right? So this is the third person, okay? Shiber. This is very important here, this part. PL might be one of the hardest ones, actually. Like, out of all of them, to be honest with you.
To conjugate?
Yeah, to like what we're doing right now.
This is like to smash. Is this
Yeah, to
more
smash. Le shaber. But it's, so the past tense, the who form is shiber, hu shiber, right? When it changes, when it goes into any of these forms, this becomes a, and it becomes shibarti, shibarta, shibart, shiber, shibra, yeah,
Shibara.
shibra. That's what happens to them, shibra, okay? Like that. And then shibarnu, shibartem, shibru, shibru. Again, same thing, it's got this kind of form, right? So that's PL. All right, I think we covered this now. What happens with what's pu'al? Pu'al is the passive of PL, right? So this would be shuba in the pu'al. And if you have a PL, you always have a pu'al. If you have a hifil, you always have a hufal. They just go together.
Is it always an ah sound though in these conjugations?
Shuba.
Shubarti?
And this will be the same. This, yeah, shubarti, shubarta, shubart, shubar, shubra, shubarta, shubarta, shubru.
So everything but who? Or he?
Yeah.
Shubra.
No, this would be also shubar. And shubar.
But he would be Shubra.
Yeah, shubra. That's what happens when you're adding something
Yeah.
here, like hey, or here, the vav, this gets shortened.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. So then, I can't believe we, right on time, we covered everything. We just went through all the binyanim. This is crazy. Never thought I would be able to do this in one lesson. I feel like that's a world record.
That is a world record.
Yeah.
I
You
never
guys-
learned this in 12 years of school.
I never took any years of Hebrew.
I mean, so you guys are way
He's a
ahead of the
great
game.
teacher.
Exactly.
I think I want to give you all of them at once
Mhm.
because I think the big picture
Yeah.
helps to conceptualize it. Usually in Hebrew classes, what they do is they'll spend a whole class doing just one of them.
Mhm.
And then you do another one.
And you forget the other one.
And then you forget the other one.
Yeah.
I want to show you all of them. And what I want to show you is that all these endings are the same. The actual conjugation is the same. And it's just you have to get to the who form, and then you have to know if I have an ending, how does it change? Sometimes it changes, sometimes it doesn't. And then you just add the same endings. We didn't get to the future tense. That was probably biting off more than we could chew.
Agreed.
But you have them there in those verb tables so you can take a look. The only difference with there's some differences with the future in that it also has prefixes as well as suffixes. But we'll have to cover that in a different lesson. So, yeah, thank you, okay?
Thank you.
Any questions before you guys go? Okay.
No,
Good.
that's great. Thank you so
All
much.
right. Ready, see you next lesson.
You don't have your microphone this time?